Welcome folks to another episode of the Riflechair channel. Today we're going to talk about Lee Enfields just a little bit. Now, for many of you out there, you just inherited one of these or recently inherited one of these. It could have been from a father, an uncle, a grandfather, a number 1 Mark III Lee Enfield, or a number 4 Mark I Lee Enfield, or a number 5 Jungle Carbine, or maybe a hunting rifle that's been reconfigured to cut down wood. Some of them are really, really ugly when they're sporterized. However, you may have inherited one of these, and you may be asking yourself, what the heck do I do with this? This piece of junk. I mean, when I grew up, Lee Enfields were not very popular. When I was a kid, they were considered to be the poor man's rifle. They're junk, right? Use it as a jack handle to jack your truck up, and use it as a club, whatever. You were seen with a Lee Enfield, you're like basically a poor guy, right? And the truth of the matter is that so many of these rifles, after World War II, you go to the local hardware store, and there'd be barrels full of Lee Enfields. You can pick one up for $10 back in the day. But the truth of the matter is that so many of them are still running. I mean, there has to be something to be said about a rifle design and the construction of a rifle that allows it to actually remain operational for 100 years or more. There has to be something said about that. So you've got a Lee Enfield, you've inherited it, and you don't know what it is. So first of all, congratulations, because obviously somebody thought highly of you, and they wanted you to have their Lee Enfield rifle. Now that should mean something to you. That should fill you with pride, and that they loved you enough to give you their Lee Enfield, and that is a huge honor. So, see, the way you can also look at it is, especially when it comes to the Commonwealth countries, New Zealand, Australia, Canada. Sorry if I left you out. I know there's lots of countries in the Commonwealth. Is that we went to war with these rifles. Our predecessors, our ancestors, went to war carrying a Lee Enfield. And they didn't look like this when they were carrying it. It looked like this. Okay. This fantastic SMLE, short magazine Lee Enfield, lovingly called Irene after my mother, was carried in Europe by a Canadian. This is basically came out of a time capsule that I got from a company called Corwin Arms. I sure hope he gets more in, so that you guys can take advantage of those kinds of things. It's been sitting in Greece in a crate somewhere over in Europe. He managed to find a few of those crates, bring them back into Canada to repatriate them, and I was a lucky Canadian to get my hands on this. See, broad arrow marked. Canadian soldiers carried this in Europe, and after the war, Canada sold them to Greece, the country Greece. Who knows what happened to them after that? But that's where this one came from. So, your sporterized Lee Enfield that you inherited from an uncle or a grandfather, or maybe your father, or a personal friend of the family, whoever it came from, probably has one hell of a story to tell on all the different places that it went. Each of these rifles have certain stamps and markings that will take you on the rifle's journey through time, to the different places that it may have gone. And in many cases, some of the stamps you'll see on a rifle are almost signatory of seeing a veteran on Remembrance Day with his medals on display as to where he was and what he did. And very fortunate to have this rifle. Now your rifle, which is probably a hunting rifle, is probably looked like that once upon a time. Okay, and there are things that you can do if you want. I mean, to restore it to its original military condition. You can restore them if you want. However, because it's a sporter, you can only take that so far before you start wandering into a different kind of, a situation where you're trying to represent it to be something that it's not anymore, because specific rifles have they have markings and stampings, as I was saying, that kind of identify its past history. Well, you're not really necessarily trying to fake that, present it as something that it's not. Anyway, so congratulations, you've landed your hands on one of these rifles. So if you don't know anything about these rifles, then I'm sorry, first of all, because that means you've led a fairly sheltered life. If you don't know what a Lee Enfield is, and kind of what it means to many of the people that live in Commonwealth countries. Like, for example, the M1 Garand is nationally recognized as the American rifle that helped to win World War II. The 1903 Springfield is internationally recognized to also represent America. Okay, the Carcano is nationally and globally recognized as the rifle that Italy took to war. The K98 Mauser is globally recognized as the weapon that World War II Germany took to war, and so on. And the Lee Enfield is globally recognized as being the rifle that Canadians, Brits, Australians, Indians, and many others armed their soldiers with and marched them off to war. So, if you're not familiar with Lee Enfields, then it only tells me that you've led a relatively sheltered life and you're not familiar with history. So, speaking of history, now is the opportunity for you to start to learn. This rifle that you've inherited from an ancestor could have a story to tell, whether it's in Russia, whether it's in India, whether it's in Pakistan. A lot of Lee Enfields were manufactured in Pakistan, the Pakistan Ordnance Factory, Royal Factory Ishapur in India, the Royal Ordnance Factory in Britain, BSA, Long Branch in Canada, Lithgow in Australia. I mean, there's nowhere in the world that has not necessarily that has not been touched by a Lee Enfield to one degree or another, and some of them are highly collectible. Well, this one here is a sniper rifle. It is 1945 manufacture. It's actually the same year of manufacture as this SMLE. They were made in the same year, and they're both Lee Enfields. And they serve different purposes. Like this one here is an optical sight. You basically take a Lee Enfield, you put an optical sight on it. World War II, they were called the number 4 Mark 1T. This one has an incorrect scope on it, but these are highly collectible, and just the scope alone is worth a fair amount of money. Can't afford one right now. This one here is kind of a Cold War warrior. This one here was manufactured in 1954. This is a number 4 Mark II Lee Enfield, and this is an incredible shooter. Our family was the family that took this rifle out of Greece, the brand spanking new Irish contract. There's a reason why that rifle was in Greece, because it was intended to go to Ireland under contract, and they defaulted on the purchase of these rifles in favor of the FN. FN fell. And then, of course, we have another type of rifle here. This here is called the Enfield Enforcer, a designated marksman's rifle for the British police forces of Britain. There are about 700 plus of them made. Half of them were destroyed. This is one of 300 that remain in the world. Very rare, highly collectible, and an incredible rifle. Fun to shoot. Very accurate. The Enfield Enforcer. So, you've inherited a rifle. You might be looking at it thinking, geez, what a piece of junk. Some of them do look pretty ugly when you take the wood off. But it's a Lee Enfield, and it has a story to tell. And your job is to find that story. Riflechair signing off. Hope you're all doing well, and as always, Maple Leaf up.